All right, everybody, welcome into the Fifth Dimension podcast with me, Evan McDermott. Want to thank y'all for tuning into this solo cast, and I really believe this is an important one today. And I'm going to be focusing on moving beyond the need to be living within survival mode. And, I say this as somebody who would be the quote unquote stereotypical person in survival mode. And I'll get into why that would be. And, I've lived in that realm, that way of programmed living for a lot of my life. And as I continue to find ways to step out of it, I'm starting to realize how it is survival mode. It is trauma based programming. It is the continuous picking at the fight or flight response within our system that keeps us really entrapped to the way that we're living. And I would say enslaved to our perceptions and stressors. So I think this is a really important podcast. And before we jump into it, if you're a fan of the show, be sure to subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Um, Head on over to mcdermott.substack.com and subscribe there. All my work is donation based, so everything on there is free. I share different poems, essays, podcasts. You'll never miss a podcast. You'll never miss a poem, whatever it may be. Go straight to your inbox. And I don't use your emails for anything. It just gathers in Substack, and I send out the newsletter and the beauties. And there's plenty of offerings over there. So check that out. And if you do want to make a donation, you can do it with a paid subscription on Substack. I do have PayPal, Venmo, all different ways you can donate to the show. And ultimately, where does that donation do? Why might you want to donate? Well, pays for dinner, pays rent. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's really what it goes to. I've definitely had to be, I would say, moderate and find a sense of balance in a lot of my own financial ways of abundance and how to generate different levels of income. And donations does actually kind of keep me alive and keeps the show going. So I appreciate you guys donating, and for those who feel called to help the show and keep it running, because as much as I love doing this, I can only do it as long as it continues to generate, I would say. And I know it's putting I put out there without the expectation to receive anything for it, and I do it because I love to inquire into these realms. But you got to do what you got to do to keep the roof over your head ultimately. So I appreciate the people who donate and really keep this show going. And I really want to talk about in this episode, how is it that we're living in survival mode and how do we exit out of it? Now, I'm going to give you a little context as to why I feel I can speak from experience on this. I mean, people look at my content, they look at the stuff that I'm doing, and they almost assume that like I come from wealth or privilege or whatever it may be, throw the words around. And it's funny because I've heard it a few times and it almost makes me laugh. Like if people knew my own upbringing, like if they knew my experience with financials and what my actual bank account even looks like or what my resources are, I'm not financially well off. I am like technically I am living in poverty. Like I live um a life that is very, very, very moderate because I didn't grow up in expansive financial resources, right? I don't come from money. I don't come from a background where things were handed to me. And it's interesting because I'm 26 right now. And early on in my life, I made things a lot more difficult than it needed to be, certainly. I racked up debts which were not all fully paid off, and I didn't necessarily want to take responsibility for my own actions and understand what it means to find balance and moderation, right? And so, I look at life now, and I heard recently somebody say the present moment and where you are in terms of what's around you, oftentimes it is from the seeds that you planted a few years ago or through your upbringing, however long it's been, right? Until you're ultimately starting to really change your mindset and reality. And it definitely resonates. I've put myself in my own hole in a lot of ways. And so I do. have to, I go paycheck to paycheck, if you want to say that. I pinch pennies. I very much find ways and am creative about how am I going to use financial resources to survive. I mean, that's why any donation always helps, because I'm like, all right, great. I'm somebody who I've really had to take on, I would say, a sense of accountability in terms of surviving. And, I've in the past, I've had to go and ask for help with money and all these different things. And I don't like doing that. Sometimes I still will get assistance if it's needed. I don't ask anymore. But money tends to come in when I most need it for a specific reason. And it's because I'm not in a perpetual fight or flight response regarding abundance. And I want to say why that matters. I don't sit here hoping I can pay the rent. I don't sit here hoping I can put food on the table. I've had my days of uh, hunger for dinner, certainly, and I've had my moments where that was my previous reality. I'm not saying I haven't done those things. I think we all go through stages, especially when we have to, I would say, start providing for ourselves and start taking responsibility, right? But I don't sit here hoping for those things to happen. Why? Because I know I'm going to make those things happen. If I'm sitting here saying, oh, I hope this is going to happen, what I'm telling the trillions of cells within my body is that I'm not going to, I need some sort of outside miracle. I'm in a sense of need. I'm in desperation. I heard somebody say hope is a poor man's plea, and I think that's very applicable to a lot of areas of life, just not in terms of financial abundance, but on the larger picture, which is what I'm going to get to. I'm just speaking my own experience here. Um, Hope is a poor man's plea. So I have been very much retraining my own subconscious mind in terms of how I look at wealth, how I look at myself, and I'm living to the retraining of that subconscious now, and I'm recreating my reality based on my new perception, right? I'm not confined to a life of poverty because I don't view myself as broke. I heard somebody say poor is a mindset. It's a temporary or no, poor is a temporary situation while broke is a mindset, right? And so again, I've had my troubles in the past where I've definitely viewed myself as broke, but I don't have that mindset anymore. And I'm slowly but surely finding ways to generate more abundance, generate more income. And, it does come through ultimately recognizing my own interaction and ability to generate, not in the sense of from desperation, not that I need to work harder to be worthy of more, but that I know I am part of this quantum field where abundance is our birthright and we can bring things in energetically. And so things show up. And so I am sure slowly but surely learning to play in that realm and bringing in more into my life with each passing day, ultimately. And even though I may still need to pinch pennies, and I may need to go shop in the discount section, or I may need to figure out, all right, where are my finances going this week? How much food can I afford? And it's funny because I'm going almost full carnivore now, almost full carnivore diet. I don't necessarily do it strict in the sense where it's like I can only eat meat. Like, no, I'm not going to limit myself. I think that's not what my body's telling me to do. But even in that, you can find ways to really eat for cheap, right? And I'm discovering how to really be, I would say, finding ways to uh, you learn how to survive in a lot of ways. And so it's fascinating because I don't feel confined to, despite hardship, despite struggle, despite not being quote unquote well off or having all these material things. And, really, there's a lot of uncertainty in my life. Most people would look at my life and be like, holy smokes, like that must be stressful. And, it has its moments where it's like, okay, there's struggle, there's hardship. I'm not going to say I have it easy by any means. I certainly don't. But I embrace the struggle and I recognize that everything in my life is a manifestation of all of my previous choices. right? So I chose this. I chose this path. For whatever reason, I chose this path. And can I accept the responsibility of the path that I have chosen? And when you do that, it can be a hard pill to swallow because we don't want to look at our own actions. We don't want to see the truth. We don't want to go into self reflection because it involves looking directly at our shadow. It involves taking responsibility for our unconscious mind, our unconscious behavior, which is 90% of what we're doing, right? We have to take a responsibility for the things that are not in our own conscious awareness, but are still a part of ourselves. And most people are too afraid to do that. We almost have to have our own personal judgment day in a sense. And this is what I believe this story speaks to. It's the judgment day. It's when you look at your life and you take a step back, you look at the big picture, the totality. You're like, wow, this is all mine. This is all my doing. I did all of this and I continue to do all of this. Is this what I want? And if it is, all right, keep making the choices that you're making. It's easier to live in the comfort of your own misery than it is to commit to change because we are creatures of habit. We program ourselves. Our brain is just a set of programs. It's like we almost have our own internal algorithm that we really stick to, which is why I think so many people are enticed by ideas such as transhumanism and all of that nonsense. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole today. Go listen to one of my podcasts with James Tunney. There's 5 of them. But we're really programmed into our misery. We're programmed into lack. We're programmed into poverty. Right? I certainly was. In many ways, I'm still uncovering blind spots on how I still am, or on how I view myself and what it is that this world is. But I'm beginning to recognize this is all my responsibility. Why would I run from myself? I need to commit to the path of radical truth, and that's what I'm doing. Radical honesty with oneself, radical courage for the situation that we're in, radical faith in my ability to create, and for almost a sense of divine intervention that can't be explained with the rational mind, and ultimately a radical commitment to love and opening my heart to the reality and choosing to love despite all the pains. That's all it's ever brought in, right? All it's ever brought in when I've chose to love deeper is pains and a perceived separation. But I continue to do it. Why? Because love is always worth it. And I continue to learn how to love just a little bit deeper, just a little bit deeper. And slowly but surely, we get into a place of unconditional love where that pain no longer defines us. But we have to go through it in order to get to that place. We have to go through the pain first, right? And so back to this idea of a judgment day, we need to have our own internal judgment day where we sit and we say, okay, this is all a manifestation of my own creation. All of it. All of it. And when you're afraid of yourself, you're afraid of that reality, you're afraid of that truth, it's no wonder you're going to run from it. And when you run from it, you enter into the fight or flight. You enter, I mean, you're flying away. Like, you're running. That's it. Flight, get on out of here. And so what does that manifest into? Fear of the unknown, fear of death, and ultimately a fear of God, a fear of the very essence of who you are in its purest form, right? That's why when they die, like you look at the story of somehow you go up to, when you die, you're going to be judged by God. And of course, so many people fear death because they can't even own their own transgressions, let alone what fucking God is going to say when they die. My goodness. Of course they're afraid. Like, I understand it completely. So really, we need to almost embrace this path of radical responsibility. And it's difficult when we are, well, I don't want to say it's difficult. I mean, in a sense, I will ask this. Is it more difficult to take responsibility and feel a little bit uncomfortable in doing so, but commit to change? Or is it more difficult to live your life in perpetual misery, wishing that you could somehow have more or be more or open your heart in a new way? What's more difficult? And For me, I tend to believe the perpetual misery and avoiding truth, uh, at a certain stage, that becomes more difficult. And we need to be honest with ourselves in that. So when it feels like the walls are closing in around you, this is the tower moment, right? This is where everything feels like it comes crashing down. It's why people have midlife crises. It's why people have these spiritual awakenings, because the foundation that they were building their lives upon within illusions, not committed to truth, not living in alignment with who they really are, when that comes down, and it will at some point, if you're avoiding it right now, knock the tower down voluntarily. It's not going to feel good, but do it. Open yourself up to the possibility, what lives beyond it, because nothing that is built in illusions will stand. Nothing. The only purpose that you have, we always talk about purpose, and this is something I've talked about on the show, just purpose in general. When I first went on the spiritual journey and when I started this show, I thought I was serving some sort of big purpose beyond the individual self. And, maybe I am. I don't really know. It doesn't necessarily matter. And this is the point I'm trying to make. It doesn't matter what the story you tell yourself is. You want to be hopeful. You want to have purpose. You want to be of service. Great. I think that's a great thing to strive for. I'm not saying don't have goals, but what is it that's right in front of you? Be honest with yourself. What is it that's right in front of you that is in need of your attention? Is that not your purpose because it's right in front of you and it needs attention? Do you need to be more loving? Do you need to be forgiving in this moment? Do you need to be truthful right now? What is it? What is it that's right in front of you? That's your purpose. That's it. That's all there is. It takes a commitment to radical presence. It takes a commitment to looking at the present moment, looking at your circumstances, looking at where you are in life and saying, well, all right, this is my purpose right now. This is what I need to do so that, one, I can be of service beyond the individual self. Self is an illusion in the purest sense. Once you realize you are connected to the whole, you are a part of this grand cosmic picture. Self doesn't matter. Ultimately, everything that you are yearning for is a return to who you are. And who are you? You are the full embodiment of the universe in one individual point of expression, right? So who you are and how you live your life needs to become a manifestation of that. That's where you need to draw in your actions and ultimately align your subconscious mind to recognize that is who you are. You're not defined by your traumas. You're not defined by poverty. You're not defined by all of these things and your current circumstances. You can define yourself by that, but you're just going to continue to live a lie. You can define yourself by this sort of grand, noble purpose of, I want to change the world. Certainly. Great. Have fun. But you're only going to continue to lie to yourself about what you want. And anything that you achieve that is outside of that, it's not going to be fulfilling. You're going to be yearning for more. It's a constant cycle, It's like the idea of the higher self ultimately. And this is a video I put out on Instagram. I'd recommend going follow me on there because I do put out little short videos every once in a while. It's like this idea of the higher self. What is the higher self? There's no higher self. The very notion you claim you're striving for a higher self. Well, what are you right now? Lower self? You're fracturing your own heart. You're fracturing your own soul. There is no higher self, lower self, higher self good, lower self bad. Like, what are you doing? The idea of the higher self in itself is an illusion. It's that it's already here and it's meant for you to simply switch the mode of perception. It's the same thing with 3D, 5D. People think they're different they're different dimensions, but they're still one and the same. You don't leave one and go into another. You simply fine tune your awareness to be coexisting and co-inhabiting those dimensions and tuning your perception to a fifth dimensional consciousness. Doesn't mean you leave 3D. I mean, you're still a physical being, even if physicality in itself is illusionary in its nature. You're not, there is no escaping the reality. There is no escaping 3D. There is no escaping a lower self. And anytime you run from something, it is ultimately what drives your subconscious mind because it needs to express itself. It is a part of you. You can't deny it. So again, it goes back to that internal little judgment day, if you will. And you don't need to be harsh on yourself. I mean, if you feel like you need a kick in the nuts, then sure, give yourself a pep talk, give yourself a little dose of reality. Not enough of us receive that honest, critical feedback regularly. I wish I had received it more when I was younger because I could have used a kick in the nuts every once in a while. And maybe there were points where people were trying to do that and I wouldn't listen. I understand that that's the reality too. But ultimately, it's about finding a sense of stability within yourself. It's about exiting this trap of survival mode. Because if you look at the system, you look at what is taking place. We got what dominates the majority of people's lives. You have a large percentage of the population who is working class, lower class, where their primary focus is putting food on the table. Their primary focus is getting the bills paid. It's getting rent paid. They're working 2 jobs, 9 to 5s, whatever, 2 full-time jobs, whatever it may be. And they are simply trying to survive. And, that's essentially the foundation of our system. It's living to simply survive. It's not living to live. It's not living to die. It's living to survive. And what does it mean to simply survive? It means that you are in fight or flight. It means that there is an immediate danger. It means that there is a stressor in that we need to do whatever it takes to survive. What if you stopped trying to survive? And I don't say that in a morbid way, but when you recognize that death, for example, is not an end, there is no end, there is no beginning, this is infinite. Like the consciousness cannot be created nor destroyed. You are an expression of something that is infinite. What does that do to the need to survive? I mean, I even look at sort of on the big picture here, right? I understand what's coming down the line for a lot of this collective, you look at things like the Great Reset, you look at what sort of they have planned. And I like to believe that we are turning the tides and we're going to create systems that are in alignment with the truth of who we are in this infinite expression of consciousness. But I understand what the reality is and what's going to happen when this current system crashes, right? Let's say the whole financial system crashes, food shortages, all these terrible worst case scenario things, which are a very real possibility, which these psychopaths of the Great Reset are planning for and want to initiate, so people get into more of a stressor, so people get more into this fight or flight mode, and they go to the only method possible of survival, and that's to turn to their governments, that's to turn to their leaders. Please help us. We are unable to cope with the harsh realities of this systematic collapse, of this breakdown. Please help us. That is what they are banking on to take place, right? If you don't need the need to survive, I look at my own circumstance, and again, I'm not very resource wise necessarily, I would say, quote unquote, prepared for a systematic collapse. I don't have large abundance of years worth of food or all of that stuff and all of that. I do what I can, and I trust in my intuition to guide me forward, which to me feels like enough. But if you were to just look at the numbers and you were to look at just you were to break it all down statistically, who's got the most? I certainly would be towards the bottom. Someone would place my odds to be quite low to make it through, and that's fine. And I don't sit here, and I understand the reality of that. If everything were to come crashing down, would I, quote unquote, survive it? I don't fucking know. Maybe. Like I like to think so. I like to think I trust my intuition enough and I know how to make shit work because I've been living in hardship without an attachment to surviving already. So would it really be that different? Not really. I mean, in ways it would certainly. There'd be less conveniences and less that I'd have to be more, again, just learning more about all right, what's the environment, what's going on around me. That's not necessarily the point I'm trying to make. What I'm saying is, if they don't have your clinging, the dependability of I need these people to survive. And people just start taking their lives into their own hands. They stop identifying with this systematic attachment. They recognize that death is not an end, so they start living. They exit the trap of fight or flight. I'm having trouble saying that after a while. Exit the trap of survival mode. That means life in itself. You begin to tap in with what is actually present. Well, your only purpose is the present moment. Your only purpose is to be here now. Your only purpose is to remember who you are and all you are. You're not the past. You're not the future. All you are is a continuous expression of the infinite within the present moment. What'll the next moment bring? Who knows? If it's death, well, sure, that's the end of this temporary expression. Okay. Now, for looking at life, when you look at the present moment, if you're dissatisfied with the present, that's actually okay. I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, be content in whatever your life is unfolding in." I'm in ways dissatisfied with the present moment because I have not achieved the goals that I would like to have achieved by now. I would like to have a bit more of abundance in resources, and I'm working towards that. So there's a sense of striving to continue to move forward that I think is necessary. There's a sense of goal setting, and there's an ideal that we can work towards. There's a harmony that we can begin to feel within our hearts. There's something greater than the individual self that we can tap into. That's that infinite, right? So, in a way, it is very normal to be dissatisfied with the circumstances of the present. I don't think you need to be trying to, what would I say? You don't need to lie to yourself and say, oh, this is all fine if the walls are coming crashing in. That's not always fine. It's not always fine. And it's not always okay. And that's fine. Being committed to the present moment and exiting survival mode is simply accepting what is and working to create and working to harmonize and ultimately bring into your awareness and bring into truth a deeper level of stability and abundance that is your birthright. Now, it can be an abundance of finance, certainly, but that's not going to bring a deeper sense of fulfillment. I would say, and what something I am living my life around is just bringing in an abundance of unconditional love and truth and purity and sacredness. Despite the walls closing in, can I still see the beauty? Despite the hardships of the world, can I still see the beauty? The man sitting on the street corner who's fallen on hard times, he is me. Can I look him in the eyes instead of passing him by as if he is not there and somehow an imperfect expression? He is beautiful as I am beautiful because we are expressions of the same beauty, right? So the present moment is about taking a radical responsibility for your own circumstances and what it is that you're creating and the changes that you're naturally going to bring into manifestation through the fruits of your creation. That's what it's all about. We don't need to run. We don't need to deny where it is that we're at right now. Where we're at right now, if I'm being perfectly honest, we are in a dire circumstances. Dire circumstances. I mean, I talk about bringing in the beauties of a new earth and abundance and harmony. I talk about those things because I know that they are an eventuality. But before we get there, we really are what path are we going to choose? I mean, there's a lot up in the air. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of people who are going to be merging into the transhumanist path, and there's no coming back from that one for a lot of you. Like, I understand what is going to happen to people who choose to exit and not participate in things like social credit scores, not participate in cashless society, not participate in these movement passports, which we already have began to see attempted to be implemented, right? What's going to happen to those people? I don't know. I'm not sure. We need to really start creating a parallel structure for ourselves and how we're choosing to live our lives. This means coming together in tribe and community. It means supporting one another with how we can. You got a whole bunch of resources, you're going to just huddle down, lock down in the mountains, and store all these like I would say resources in the sense of, let's say fiat currency and money. Like, I mean, what's it going to be worth in about 5 years? Probably nothing. Your money is basically monopoly money, and I say that as somebody who is still generating money and using money. I'm not saying that just go and burn it all, but you need to be open and generous. I give as much as I can. I've found people who have less tend to give more. And as the more you can give, the more you will receive. So ultimately, can you choose to give? Can you choose to be generous? Can you choose to lend a helping hand, especially if you're somebody you feel you're adequately prepared for what's to come? Can you help those who maybe could use a little assistance? How can you continue to bridge gaps? How can you continue to build bridges in connections and relationships? How can you continue to shine light upon the darkness and be honest and truthful? How can you choose to be forgiving? Ultimately, it's about continuing on this path, not from the sense of needing to survive, but being meaningful, creating meaning. And meaning comes from the spiritual consciousness. It comes from the knowing of who we are. Meaning itself is a sensory perception within ourselves that we have to choose to cultivate and tune into. And you're only going to tune into it. You're only going to find that deeper sense of meaning. And look, this is why I call my Substack page Deeper Meaning. Deeper Meaning with Evan McDermott. Because you need to choose what your meaning is. You need to choose why you keep going. Why are you tuning into the present? What is the present moment revealing to you and showing to you? What is the meaning in that? Can you feel that? You don't even have to necessarily put it into words, but can you feel it and can you accept the conditions that you are currently within? Can you accept them as one, the fruits of your own manifestation? Can you take radical responsibility for who you are, where you are, and what this all is? And can you take radical responsibility for the need to maybe bridge certain connections, the need to forgive, the need to love a little bit more, the need to be a little bit more honest? Look at what the circumstances of life call for and let your actions be guided by that. That is how you escape the trap of survival. That is how you look. That is how you go. And I even look at survival mode, and I understand. I understand it's hard to put food on the table. Why? Because I live that, right? I understand. I've had hunger for dinner many times in my life. People ask why I'm so skinny. I'm 6'4", 160 something pounds, and I'm very lean and in shape. I work out quite a bit, but I don't need a ton. Why? Because I have to. I have to be moderate. I understand it's hard to put food on the table. I can't eat as much as I quote unquote want to right now because I don't have the resources to do it. So I get it's hard. It's hard uh, to live fully, presently, and from a space of beauty when you are fighting to get those baseline survival needs met. But what I'll ask is this: if you decide and this is what I've learned from having a lack of these survival needs met consistently. If you choose, if you even say, I don't need dinner, I don't need a roof over my head. That's not to say to just give these things up. I'm not saying go live out on the street for a bit. But if you recognize that death is not an end, and you recognize that you don't even need this body, you don't need this identity, you don't need any of it, it puts a certain perspective into terms of how you live your life and how you go through the day to day and what is ultimately important. It allows you to continue to generate and be creative from a sense of a deeper purpose and fulfillment. I mean, I sit here and I could be out working 90 hours a week, trying, to generate a little bit more comfort. But here I am doing a podcast with no guarantee of anything to come from it for me personally. Why? Why? You could look on the surface and it makes no sense. None. I have enough food in my fridge for the next, I don't know, 3 days. What'll I eat after that? Who knows? I'll survive. I'll figure that out. I'll figure that out in 3 days. But so why do I do that? It's because there's a deeper connection beyond this individual body, beyond this individual expression that I know to be true and that I can trust in, that I can put my faith in, that all will be working out exactly as it's supposed to. And all it takes for me is to let the heart lead and the brain follow. I can't always rationalize these things. Heart lead, brain follow. It'll catch up later. And one day I'll be able to look back and see how all the pieces fit together. And maybe I won't. Maybe I won't get that opportunity to even reflect on it. And that's fine too. That's fine too. But ultimately, that is how you escape survival mode. It's knowing who you are and what this is and what this system is created to be. It's created to keep you in the perpetual fight or flight, to keep you perpetually stressed, seeking outside of yourself, running from who you are, running from the fruits of your own responsibility. And we can't afford to do that any longer. We're going to be leading ourselves straight into our own, straight into a technological slaughterhouse if we do that. So, yeah. I would say we all have our own struggles. We all have our own challenges and ways that we're put into survival mode. I mean, I just spoke particularly about finances and financial abundance and all of, my own living within the realm of poverty in a sense, because that's what I've lived. That's my experience. But my goodness, there is a trap specifically designed for everybody, and that's the intricacies of this system. So evaluate what is holding you back. What are you dependent upon? And can you release your dependency upon it and choose to be free? Ultimately, that's what freedom is. So I'll leave you with that. That's going to wrap up this episode. Like I said, if you want to donate to the show, cool. Venmo, PayPal, it's all in the episode show notes below. Head on over to McDermott.substack, maybe a paid subscription over there, gift a subscription, or subscribe. It's all donation based. You can get it for free. Check out the work I'm doing over there. And subscribe to whatever platform you're on. And I would say send this to somebody who maybe is in that survival mode and could use a little boost. So I'm going to wrap up the show there. Oh, purchase my new book if you want. Mystical Collection. That's in the show notes too. That's a cool way to support the show if you like. I only get so the book costs $20. And if you buy it on Amazon, I get like 5 per sale. So it's not like I get a ton, but I put my heart and soul into that book. So you can check it out if you'd like. But yeah, that's going to wrap up this episode. Everything that you may need is in the episode show notes below. Look at, I would say, and have your own judgment day in a sense, and take responsibility for where it is that you are right now and craft that vision for what you're moving towards and reconnect with the beauty that lives within your own heart. I'll see you all next time.